Thank you for joining us for an overview of Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. Our goal is that by the end of today's presentation, you will have received some clear information about ASD, including what it is and the main characteristics. In order to help you better understand your child with ASD, we will review how children with autism think and perceive their environment, and some of the tricky issues that may arise with their behavior. Finally, we will look at some strategies you can use to support your child with ASD and some helpful resources after a child receives a diagnosis of ASD. Let's start by looking at the characteristics of ASD. It is important to remember that every child with autism is unique, and so are their strengths and needs. The information presented focuses on the general characteristics and strategies, recognizing that each child requires an individualized approach to learn based on their strengths. ASD is a lifelong neurodevelopmental disorder. We do not yet know the exact cause of ASD. However, it is believed that within individuals, there is a complex interaction involving multiple genes and the environment. While the impact of environmental factors is not fully understood, there has been a lot of research done on the role of genes. No single gene causes autism. Rather, we have learned that there are multiple genes and various genetic changes that contribute to the development of autism. This figure is from a report by the Public Health Agency of Canada and visually represents the number of children identified with ASD. They found that 1 in every 66 Canadian children between 5 and 17 years of age had autism. They also found that ASD was diagnosed in 1 in 42 boys and 1 in 165 girls, so the sex ratio continues to be about 4 males to 1 female. In 2013, the American Psychiatric Association released the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, commonly referred to as the DSM. The DSM-5 merged diagnoses that had previously been separate into a single diagnosis, Autism Spectrum Disorder. The term spectrum refers to the wide range of characteristics found in individuals diagnosed with ASD. Having autism presented as a spectrum disorder allows clinicians to account for the variation in symptoms and behaviors from person to person, as well as changes over time in an individual with ASD. As you see on the slide, there are 2 major categories of symptoms identified: social communication and social interaction, as well as restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. Let's talk about each of these in more detail. The first category is social communication and social interaction. According to the DSM-5, an individual must have all 3 of the following characteristics, currently or in the past, in order to receive a diagnosis of ASD. Problems with social emotional reciprocity, problems with nonverbal communication, problems developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships appropriate to developmental level. Let's review each of these 3 areas of need in more detail and what they can look like. Children with autism may have difficulties with responding to greetings. They may share information that isn't appropriate to the social context or situation. They may also have difficulty understanding that other people may think differently than them or look at situations in a different way. Joint attention can be difficult, which means they may not naturally learn how to share focus with another person. For example, by pointing or looking at the object and then looking at another person. They may speak in sentences, but may have difficulty engaging in back and forth conversation. Individuals with ASD tend to have a difficult time understanding nonverbal forms of communication. This creates a challenge in conversations as we mostly communicate through nonverbal methods such as eye contact, tone of voice, gestures, body language, and facial expressions. Figurative language goes beyond the literal meanings of the words and phrases and comes in a variety of forms. Figurative language can be particularly difficult for individuals with autism as they tend to understand things quite literally. For example, if you said to someone, "I totally agree with you," while rolling your eyes, most people would understand that you're being sarcastic and you don't agree at all. But an individual on the spectrum might believe that you do agree because that is literally what you said. Idioms are another form of figurative language and can also be quite difficult to understand. For example, if you were to tell a child with autism, "It's raining cats and dogs," they might look to see if cats and dogs are actually falling out of the sky. Developing social relationships can be a challenge for children on the autism spectrum. Learning social skills often happens through imaginative play and while playing with other children. Because play skills may develop differently in children with autism compared to their peers, social skills can be slower to develop and may need to be taught directly. So much of making and keeping friends relies on us understanding the often unspoken social rules, or what we sometimes refer to as the hidden curriculum. For example, at home, it may be okay for your child to leave the bathroom door open, but when using a public washroom or when you're at someone else's home, they're expected to close the washroom door. These hidden rules can be hard for children with ASD to naturally pick up on in order to adjust their behavior. Next, we will turn our attention to the second category, which is restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. In addition to having problems with social communication and social interaction, according to the DSM-5, an individual must also display at least 2 of the following characteristics, currently or in the past: stereotyped or repetitive speech or motor movements, insistence on sameness, resistance to changes in routine or ritualized patterns of behavior, intense and restricted interests, unusual seeking or avoiding of sensory stimuli. Let's turn our attention to each of these areas of need in more detail and what they can look like. Stereotypies involve repeating a motor or vocal behavior over and over. Hand flapping and body rocking are examples of motor stereotypies. Squeals and grunts are examples of vocal stereotypies. Children with autism may also engage in repetitive motor movements, such as lining up toys or spinning objects. Echolalia and scripting involve repeating others' words or phrases, perhaps from a TV show they like. This type of language may or may not be used functionally to communicate. Children with ASD may become insistent on things being the same and struggle if there are even minor variations in what they or other people are doing, or variations in the environment. Let's review some examples of rigid behaviors that are listed on the slide. Insistence on sameness, extreme distress at small changes, difficulties with transitions, rigid thinking patterns, and rituals. We often think of this as stickiness, in that children with ASD may get stuck on things being a certain way so strongly that they can't move on, and may become quite distressed and engage in challenging behaviors because they are struggling to adjust to these changes. Individuals with autism may also become quite fixated on particular items or topics. For example, a child who only cares about Thomas the Train may watch videos, play with toys, or have conversations with others, but all videos, toys, and conversations must be about Thomas. Another form of this behavior includes children becoming attached to household objects and then insisting on carrying them around. For example, a particular wooden spoon from the kitchen. Sometimes children with autism seek out or avoid sensory stimuli. Hypersensitive describes a child who may seem to overreact to certain sensory experiences. Hyposensitive describes a child who may seem to underreact to certain sensory experiences. Examples of sensory seeking or avoidance behaviors are listed on the slide and include apparent indifference to pain or temperature, adverse response to specific sounds or textures, excessive smelling or touching of objects, and a visual fascination with lights or movement. The DSM-5 includes other criteria that are required for a diagnosis of ASD. These 3 additional diagnostic criteria are: symptoms must be present in the early developmental period. Symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in current functioning. Symptoms are not better explained by intellectual disability or global developmental delay, although ASD and intellectual disability co-occur in some individuals. Now that we have reviewed information about the diagnosis and characteristics of autism spectrum disorder, let's talk about how we can use this knowledge to better understand your child with ASD. You'll recall that autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Individuals with ASD sometimes refer to those who don't have autism as neurotypical because of the differences in brain functioning associated with ASD. In a 2015 article available through Autism Ontario called The Mask, Matthew J. LeMay wrote, "I see the same world through a different lens, and my brain runs on a completely different operating system." It can be upsetting and confusing when your child is acting in ways that we don't understand. Knowing how your child might be perceiving a situation can help us with our own reactions to their behaviors. Understanding your child's unique needs as well as their motivation for behaviors can help us to appreciate where they are coming from and give us ideas about the best ways to approach situations and support them. Let's turn our focus to how we can use our understanding of ASD to help us anticipate tricky issues and determine how we may best support your child. Generally speaking, things that are new and unknown, unclear, out of the ordinary, or not straightforward can be challenging for individuals with ASD. As with all other aspects of ASD, how difficult these skills or activities are will vary depending on the child. Several examples are listed on the slide. Let's review a few of them. Unstructured environments, such as being in a cluttered room or not having a schedule for the day. Transitions, like moving from one activity to another or switching from shoes to winter boots. Generalization. For example, a child who initially learned to wave bye-bye when dad went out the front door to work now waves whenever anyone leaves their home. For children with ASD, it can be hard to think about things in a different way, or they may be very black and white in their thinking. For example, some children follow certain rules very closely and have difficulty tolerating when others, or even they themselves, don't or can't follow those rules. We often see rigid and inflexible behavior associated with eating. For example, some children will eat one particular food, such as McDonald's fries, but aren't interested in eating any other type of fries, even if they are really similar. They may not even want to eat McDonald's fries if they've been dumped out of the original box onto a plate. Many children with ASD have one or more chronic sleep problems. This includes unusual or disturbed sleep patterns, including difficulty falling asleep, frequent and prolonged waking during the night, waking up earlier, and generally sleeping less than their peers. Sleep issues go hand in hand with behavioral challenges during the day, such as increased irritability, aggression, or difficulty paying attention. Let's now review a few general supports and strategies we use with children with ASD. If you know it's tricky for your child and have an understanding of some tools that help them, you can prepare them and the environment to be more successful. Some children with autism may have relatively stronger visual skills, such as learning by observing, than they do with understanding verbal language or learning by listening. This could be because visuals are more direct and concrete. We use visuals to support language. Visuals support to help and establish and maintain attention. They give information in a way that can be quickly and easily interpreted. Visuals clarify verbal information and they support transitions between activities and location. Pictures can also show the child exactly what we want them to focus on. For example, holding up a picture of a pair of shoes if it's time to put their shoes on. Visuals help to support your child through routines by preparing them for what is coming next. They provide structure and predictability. Visuals can also be individualized to support your child. Visuals can show all kinds of different routines, like how to get dressed, or they can display the steps of a longer routine. In the picture on the slide, we see an example of a bathroom routine. These visual schedules could be made with pictures only, pictures with words, or words only. You can even make a visual schedule using objects to help children who may need more concrete cues about what they need to do next. For example, an actual toothbrush and a tube of toothpaste. There are good reasons to offer your child choices whenever possible. Choices can provide a sense of control over your child's environment and may help to promote compliance and decrease aggressive behavior. Consider what choices you can embed into your child's day. Choices may occur between activities. For example, the child selects between different activities such as playing on the computer or listening to music. Choices can be about location. For example, the child will have the opportunity to choose where the activity will take place, such as, do you want to eat your lunch at the table or on a blanket on the floor? Choice boards can also be created and used as a reward for completing chores. The child will choose an activity displayed on the choice board after the chore has been completed from a variety of predetermined options. It is important to remember that you are still in control of what choices to offer your child and when. For example, you may allow your child to choose which pajamas they wear and which book you read to them, but you still choose when they go to bed. Here are 2 resources you may be interested in accessing. Autism Speaks 100-Day Kit for Newly Diagnosed Families of Young Children is a free resource that can be found on the website displayed on the screen. 10 Things Every Child with Autism Wishes You Knew is a book available for purchase. Autism Ontario has a long-standing history of providing supports and services across the province for individuals with autism and their families. Autism Ontario is available to help families understand the Ontario Autism Program, OAP. They clarify what services are available to purchase with OAP funding. They help to find qualified providers and help to navigate autism services. They provide access to parent resources and workshops, as well as provide opportunities for families to connect with each other. They can be contacted by phone at 1-800-472-7789 or by visiting their website at www.autismontario.com. Thank you very much for taking time today to join us. We hope you found this workshop useful. Please feel free to email your questions or comments to us at autismprogram@hhsc.ca.